that if you're following along. And we'll get the notes posted after the call, which is the first. I'm going to turn my camera off too so it doesn't take up extra space. Okay, so as a reminder, we post the notes for each month and the quarterly calls on the GA Editor website, so you can grab them there after the call. And another reminder, and we've been using it a little bit lately, that we do have FAQs for accessing WFDS with the new EAuth and PIV login, and they're on the logins. The FAQ is on the login screen of production and training, so it's easy to find it right there. And then this is a big one. I put in bold and underlined it because we've been having a little trouble with the IIA help desk giving accurate information here, and we are working with them to clean that up. But to access WFDS Classic, you do not need an INAP account, and you won't be using your password either, but you do not need an INAP account. For next gen, you do. So for those of you that are part of the next gen user groups, you do need an INAP account, but for Classic, you do not. So if you've got users that are trying to figure out how to get in and are having trouble and they're talking about INAP, can help clear up one path is that they don't need an INAP account. And then we just a reminder, we did that agency administrator interagency WFDS refresher back in March. And for those that want to watch it, we've recorded it and it's available on the RD&A website. And for those that are for service that want a certificate for their training records, there's information on that site too about how to get the certificates from the Wildland Fire Learning Portal. And then if there's also information on that site about more WFDS refresher materials, if you're looking for ideas for trainings that your units are putting on, including we also have, and it's linked in the document or in the agenda, a document that has talking points about WFDS, ISAP, and RMA. So that might be something to review as well if you're looking at those. And I had meant to include in the email that I sent the agenda, and I did not. But then I was going to add it to the chat, but the interagency chat won't let me paste documents. So I'll send it out separate. But we were working to help share the communication between the NWCG memos relating to the discontinuation of the Haynes Index and the lightning activity level. So I'll get those forwarded out. I'm sure many of you already have them, but we're trying to help spread the awareness. And if it helps with you in distribution, we'll get those to you. And then finally, if your units have WFDS training dates that you know of, please send them to us. We put them on the GAE training calendar, and we do look at those when we are planning releases and other possible downtimes, and we'll coordinate and communicate if we know that there's a scheduled training. Okay, I'm going to move on to emerging issues. We have one that we were going to share, but before I hit that, let me pause. Is there any emerging issues that the GAEs would like to bring up? Hey, Kevin, I see you.
Morgan, this is Ben.
Yep.
I just noticed this morning I was looking at an old decision and pod lines weren't showing up. The polygons would show up fine, but the actual lines would not. And I didn't mess around with it a whole lot other than just noticing that. I was going to explore it further this afternoon and turn in a ticket if I can figure out how to make them show up.
Okay, I'm not tracking that as an issue. So if you can you let us know we can look, but if you've got a specific incident or area you're looking at, that might help us
okay,
get to the bottom of it faster.
All right. I'll submit a ticket this afternoon.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Yep.
Okay, any other issues? Okay, so I'll hit the one that we're tracking. we are aware of some DOI users specifically, but not all of them, but some of the DOI users that have changed agencies within the DOI. So like they were BLM and now they're Park Service, or they're Fish and now they're BLM. That when they try to use the EAuth to get into WFDIS or other applications like IFTDIS, the system is reverting to their previous agency's email. So now they're Park Service, but it keeps finding their BLM address, for example, and then they're not able to access the application because we're trying to verify on email. And we have raised this issue up. And so just that we do have some new information, but to be clear, the workaround for these people, and there are some people on this call that this has affected. So those people should always still be able to get into WFDIS using a login.gov account rather than their PIV, since it's the PIV email that's not being correctly used by EAuth. So all those people should be able to get in by login.gov. But we did also just get an email about a possible fix that's coming. So I wanted to share that with you. It looks like the plan from the EAuth team is to push out a possible fix on the 21st of May. So in about a month. And the message says that it would allow users to change the email that FAMAuth is storing for them. So I don't know much more about it than that. When that comes out, we will try to test it ourselves about what it takes to change it and what the users who are having this impact them, like what they should do, and get the message out to those users. So we don't know much. We haven't got to test it yet. We don't know that much about it, but we just got this message that they're working to put a fix out on the 21st of May. And I'll pause there. Oh, Casey, yeah, it's Casey could test it. It's definitely impacting Casey. We will take you up on your offer to test it. Any other questions about that issue?
Hey, Morgan, it's Casey.
Yes, both Caseys have been impacted. Go ahead, Casey.
Oh, Casey girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for helping get that pushed along. I've been taking a lot of screenshots and stuff like that and working with the Forest Service representative on that to help him understand. So hopefully that's helpful. And then I do understand the login.gov is the workaround. I just you can't have a solution and then provide a workaround. So that was more my point for those guys. So anyway, yeah, I can get in through things on login.gov. And he said it sounded like EAuth was just not able to, there was no option for anybody to change the emails in there, or FAMAuth or whatever it was. Anyway, so that'll be good when that comes out. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll reach out to test. And if the date changes on the 20, their message here says the 21st of May, if something changes, then we'll let you know, because we want to try it as well, testing it. Okay, I will move on. If you've got other emerging issues that come up later, please just reach out to TJ, Rick, or I offline from the meeting. Okay, we don't have any new GAEs or changes this month. So as a reminder, if you know of counterparts or people within your group that have changed and need that role or no longer need it, let us know, because we need to update WFDIS and our mailing list and the help desk. Okay, a couple things on staffing. We have a ORISE data analyst that just joined our group. Her name is Jackie Cristolini. She'll be working with Amanda, Susan, and Jonah to support all things data with the RD&A. Also, we have a detailed person behind Tim Sexton. So the acting program manager for the RD&A, his name is Larry Wiegand, and he comes from the Forest Services R&D work area, helping coordinate information management. Also, so that concludes the end of Henry Bastian's time with us. He was in that position, detailed into that position just prior to Larry. So thanks to Henry for all your support and help with the RDA, and I know we'll keep working together. And then also we have a farewell to Tessa Nicolay. This is her last day with with us in the agency. So we just wanted to thank her for all her contributions to the fire community. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rick. He is going to give a demo on the PMS 236 Part D in WIFDIS, the org assessment. And I know many of you have seen it, but we want to keep sharing that since it's new and we've had some users with questions. Go ahead, Rick. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, so a few months back, we added this feature into WIFDIS in response to NWCG updating some of the risk and complexity assessment forms. And we had just the first incidents in the southern area actually use this in production. And there were some speed bumps. We had some users that suddenly saw a new screen in WIFDIS, and that's something we haven't made in a while. So just want to take a quick minute to run through this and take any questions that you guys might have on it. So what we added was, in an incident, if you go to your organization assessment and you go to create a new organization assessment, if you choose either of these two options, type 1 CIMT or type 2 CIMT here, you're going to see another screen that was not in WIFDIS last season. So if I select this here and publish, it takes me to this screen called functional complexity. And there you will have to rate each of the 5 major ICS areas: command, planning, operations, finance, and logistics, at either low, moderate, or high. And that is a rating of what the needs of the incident are in that area, and put in some comment about this. So this is the opportunity for the local unit to describe what the incident is going to take. For example, if you have a very remote incident that you know is going to require personnel in remote spike camps, is going to require extra communication infrastructure, or extra ways to move people around, you might rate the logistics for that incident as high and note some of those things in the comment field. Once you have filled out all 5 of these, you will be able to move on to the next screen. And we did add some notes straight out of the NWCG form to kind of describe what sort of things that this area is related to. Once you fill out all of those, you'll be able to publish, and it will take you back to this screen. So once you are in here, we hit return. Okay, that shows up in several places for you. It will appear if you go into the assessment and look specifically at the org assessment. You'll see this button here that says View Functional Complexity. That will let you see what you have in there right now. And then all of this information will appear in your decision, both in the draft decisions, if you make a PDF draft for a decision, on screen in the draft decision, and then in your actual published decision. So if you look at the risk section of the decision where your organizational assessment is, you will see all of those ratings and the comments that go with them there in the decision. Okay, that's a quick and dirty run through. Are there any questions or any observations from folks who have run into this? Go ahead, Carrie.
Hey, thanks for going through that, Rick. Actually, I had a question about that just this morning.
Oh, good.
And we were going to sit down next week and run through a scenario and training. And so now I know what to expect. But the question was regarding, depending on which incident management organization you choose, whether it be type 1 CIMT or type 2 CIMT, is that also going to dictate what type of agency administrator qualification you're needing?
Now that is one of the big questions circling around, and Morgan may be able to speak better to that. I'll take a quick swing at it, and then she can correct anything I get wrong on this. So yes, NWCG is in the process of phasing out the idea of type 1, type 2 altogether and going to complex incident management teams. That has not been adopted uniformly across all of fire management. For instance, for the Forest Service, agency administrator qualifications are based on, let's say, are still rated out at type 1, type 2, right, or are rated so that they a type 1 incident requires a certain qualification. A certain agency administrator qualification is certified for type 2 incidents. And as far as what that looks like when there aren't type 1 and type 2 incidents, and it's just complex incident management, is still a question that's getting shaken out in a lot of ways. For right now, my understanding is that Forest Service agency administrators are still looking at which of those two buttons you picked in WFDS, whether it was type 1 CIMT or type 2 CIMT, to make that determination. That's a question that's still kind of in flux, and things are still getting figured out. So keep an ear out for any changes. Morgan,
that's basically the same conclusion that we came to. Is like you order a CIMT, but you click the type 1. You want a WFA1 agency administrator.
Yep, that is my understanding. Morgan, are we on base with that?
Well, I would just add that there's still some questions that need answered. And then also just to recognize this is like a Forest Service issue because the DOI that doesn't use the task books. But Carrie, Tammy Parkinson and I have been working with the IWDG and the Forest Service's line officer group, that their subgroup that manages the task book, and have pointed out to them that there's been different information sent out. The task book group had put out information about relating to whether you would use the complexity level, and then a specific region in the Forest Service had put out some direction that you would use the org assessment from WFDS, and we are noting that those are two different fields, so they should get clarity on which field they mean to begin with, and then secondarily clarify for the field what is the expectation when somebody does select CIMT. And the line officer team was putting together a frequently asked questions, and one of the questions was going to be to answer that, but they haven't answered it yet, and they're working on it. So it's still a bit muddy at this time with that, working with that group.
Thought that might be the case. I think we'll just go with a WFA1 or WFA2, depending on which one we select in the decision. But thanks, Rick and Morgan. We'll stay tuned.
Hey, Morgan, I'm gonna wade into this one. Yeah, all that
Yes.
sounds well and good, but it does sound like a personal problem for the Forest Service, and I really hope you guys don't spend a whole lot of time trying to code like a Forest Service solution to that when it only applies to the Forest Service. So just hoping you're keeping that in mind.
Yes.
Your money could be spent better spent elsewhere.
I don't think there's been any plans to adjust. There's no plans, I'll just say, to adjust WFDS for the agencies there. It's more like that agency should be issuing some direction about clarifying what they mean, and in the task book, specify it in the task book, or guidance related to that, and not something that we would adjust the application for. Now,
Perfect.
what we might do or would do is if the PMS 236 is edited and drops the slash, like see how it says type 1 / CIMT, that matches the 236 right now. So if there's a future edition of that where they drop the slash and it's only CIMT, then we would make efforts for WFDS to follow suit so that we're matching the 236. But that would just to be in lockstep with that, and not a change we made specific for an agency.
Perfect. Thanks.
And did I see, was it Mike Davis who had a question?
I was Dan Michael. I just had Dan
Michael. Sorry.
A corollary. I think it was me anyway. I raised my hand. I had a sort of comment related to that, and it's not just Forest Service who still has typed quals for incidents. All of our state and local government partners in California are not on board with having the complex qualification. So when we can evaluate a task book for one of our local government people on an IMT, it is going to matter whether it's type 1 or 2. So it's not just a Forest Service issue. hopefully it'll get worked through. I just want to point out that, yeah, it maybe doesn't apply to other federal agencies, but that doesn't mean it's just Forest Service who has that.
Yeah, I think let me clarify. When I said that, because maybe you'll correct me too. I meant in terms of the signing authority for the WFDS decision and which like agency administrator, WFA level you're assigned, and those are that as far as I know, that was a Forest Service specific issue because the DOI does signing authority based on dollar amounts, and they don't use that same task book that the Forest Service uses. But am I not tracking something with the state of California there?
No, so you're right in that what it matters for the Forest Service for is type, agency administrator quals, whether it's type 1 or 2, but whether the incident is type 1 or 2 matters to a lot of our cooperating agencies in terms of the qualification system here. So yeah, it doesn't matter on the AA side, but keeping that split between type 1 and 2 is something that's important for now, not just for the Forest Service AA issue, but for the California cooperators. And I don't think California is the only state that's in that boat where the state certification system hasn't caught up to us.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
All right. Then if there weren't any other questions, I'll turn it back over to Maureen. Thank you.
Okay, trying to share the agenda again. Wait, trying to get unmuted.
We can hear you and see the agenda.
Thanks, because I just muted myself again. I think I got it. Okay, I'm going to hit the WFDS Classic updates. We recently deployed 2 emergency releases, 8.3.01 and 8.3.02. Those were to address first an issue where WFDS was missing some updates that they were reading from Irwin, and we've got that corrected. And the second was to correct a bug that was preventing the fire modeling results from being generated after we had made a ArcGIS upgrade. So the notes for those 2 emergency releases are on the homepage. And what we're working on right now is a release 8.3.1, which is focused on some upgrades and fixes for fire season. And we are actually planning to release that to training only tomorrow. That's not our norm. We usually do release to training and prod at the same time on typically a Wednesday, but we're pushing out to training tomorrow early in the morning. And then if everything goes fine with that, then we will push it to production on Monday, the 22nd, early in the morning. And we don't anticipate much impact to the users because we'll be doing it at 5 a.m. Mountain Time. And we'll get the release notes posted shortly after we get the release out. And then next up is will be 8.3.2, which is some overflow work that didn't make it into the one we're doing on tomorrow and Monday. And it'll incorporate more, a couple more bugs that we were wanting to address before fire season. And then our eye will turn more to the archiving effort. And that is all I had for classic updates. I'm going to turn it over to Jonah, who is going to cover the geospatial data.
Yeah, good afternoon. Let's see. So we have finished our upgrade to ArcGIS Pro, coming off a desktop. It's taking the developers a little bit to get used to it, but it's a great upgrade for all the Forest Service folks who have had to do that recently. No submissions were received for FMUSO version 83, so we're going to be skipping that one. Next version 84. Those shapes are due to your agency leads by May 30th. And that spring pod update is completed. So Ben, I was just looking at that. There are no lines in Colorado on the National Feature Service, except the Monte La Salle. So if Colorado wants lines, they'll need to be built out by June 1st. That's our next import of any new additions or edits for pod polygons and pod lines. So any edits need to be done by June 1st for that one. And then during this month, quarterly here, we're finishing up field treatment polygons, adding in the 2023 data. There were some updates to fire weather zones that I just noticed. So most of Florida, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska had some fire weather zone updates that are getting added in as well. And then I just wrapped up retardant avoidance areas for the Forest Service on both aquatic and terrestrial, because those edits were all due to your agency last month. And lastly, protection agency. We're going to add in Utah, got Montana, Idaho, and California getting updated right now. Park Service found a little error in Montana, so we're getting that fixed before I add that in. And then I found some issues in California, so I'm working with the data manager there to get that finalized. And yeah, that's about it for us. Feel free to reach out to me at any time if you have questions or concerns on data sets.
Do you have a question? Did the Alaska submissions make it in? I'm not make it into the system yet. I know they're not in there yet, but just making sure that you guys received them.
Yep, we got all those from Jen this week.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, any other questions for Jonah? All right, I'm gonna move. Oh, Eamon, go ahead.
Hey, Jonah Morgan, it's Eamon with Park Service Pacific West Region. Yeah, I just had a question about the retardant avoidance. I know we don't have a national product for Park Service. There are a number of parks, at least in our region, that have developed management requirements for retardant avoidance. I'm just wondering if that's something that we can incorporate into a retardant avoidance later, or at this point, if it's just better to kind of keep it at the unit level with the management requirement for MPS units.
You know, it's something we've talked about. Like, if you pull up the aquatic layer and it only covers Forest Service lands, you're like, hey, wait a second, where's the rest of this? Let me chat with the developers and reach out to me after this, and we'll see what we can get done.
Yeah, maybe offline discussion. Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, thanks you.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to the Irwin status, which is not much at the moment because the release for V9 was over a month ago, and we had, like I said, the little hiccup earlier on, and we did an emergency release to adjust for that. So also, as it's just continuing to make sure the system's working, or WIPTIS is exchanging as we expect, and that the draft business plan is out for Irwin version 10 and it's being reviewed. And we've got a link there if you want to look at more information. And just that there was the data summit meeting last week in Boise, and suspect many of you participated in portions of that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Sinowick for updates for next gen. And go ahead, Sarah.
Hello. Yes. So I'm Sarah Sinowick, work with RD&A, supporting WIPTIS Next Gen. And we are super excited to say that we are still on track to have training online sometime, hopefully before your next call in July. But so that's our goal. And with that, I've looking towards more communications coming from us in terms of user groups, maybe on strategic assessments, or maybe if you all are interested in some geographic area editor specific user group or trainings. I do have an ask for you all. So UAT, our user acceptance training environment, is open to everybody. And everyone who was a GAE back in October already has access to that environment through the FAMOF because I gave it to you. And so what we're looking at doing is we're going to open it up to everyone now. Anyone who wants an account on the UAT instance, we are approving those accounts, and we're getting them in, 1 a day, 2 a day, something like that. So I've created some instructions both for users requesting accounts, but also for GAE and support roles to be able to manage those accounts. So either accept accounts or grant accounts without users asking for them. So if you're working with folks to be able to do that. So instead of dropping it into the chat here, I'll see if I can work with Morgan and Rick to get that sent out to all you guys. And I'm really looking for feedback if I missed any steps. Because I've maxed out my demo test accounts. So I do not have another account that doesn't have an INAP account. So also, if somebody wants to work with me and you have a user who's pretty green and wants to go through the whole process, that would be awesome. Because I need to do some screen captures, so I need to make some videos. So what I'm hoping for, I've got my email address in those. Looking for feedback on that. If you do want to, if you're working with somebody to get an account, working through the whole process, and you as a GAE want to approve that account, let us know, because otherwise we'll just go in and approve it, because that's what we've been doing. So yeah, just hit me up and I will let everybody know so we don't beat you to it. And I think that is it for me. Wes, do you have anything? Okay, no Wes. I did think of another thing. So in our dev environment, we do have FS Pro almost 100% working. So as some kind of catnip to have you guys check into UAT, that should be being pushed to UAT in the next little while. Thanks. And so that's FS Pro.
Thanks, Sarah. And one thing I'll add is the Next Gen team has been incredibly responsive at giving demos or joining calls for anybody who is curious. So if you have a need, reach out to Sam Amato or Sarah or Wes Hall. And Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, so on let's see, May 26th, I got an email from INAP and it said that my WFDIS UAT access had been removed. I've just got back in and checked on it. I'm just wondering, like, what was that about, or and wonder if that happened to anybody else.
So it did happen to some other folks, and apparently was confusing to some other folks as well, as Peter had given us a heads up. So what happened was INAP will let you have multiple roles in an application. So we have a lot of folks who, when they either requested an account or when we set up the accounts, receive several roles. So GAE and author and viewer. INAP just went through at our request and made a change to the application to where for WFDIS Next Gen, users are only going to be allowed one role in the system because that's all they need. Anything else just is extra stuff that makes for confusion and opens the door to errors and bugs. So what you got was an email saying all of the extra roles that you had on your account were being removed, leaving you just the one that you actually need. It was especially confusing because people got this who either did not realize that they had an account set up in WFDIS UAT for them, or thought that it was in reference to WFDIS Classic. Again, like Morgan mentioned at the beginning of the call, WFDIS Classic is not using INAP at all. Several people had concerns there, but that's nothing to do with the current WFDIS application. Yep, it's just getting rid of those extraneous extra roles and trying to simplify things.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate the explanation. Yeah, no problem with access, just kind of curious, and that explains it all. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for the question. Anything else for the Next Gen team?
I did want to say that we do have Wes Hall back full time now from his marvelous adventures to the Washington office. So full strength.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, I will move us into the round robin. And this is a space for you all to share coordination opportunities, anticipated fire activity and trainings, and feedback to us. I'll just read through each of the geographic areas, and anyone from that area can feel free to speak up, and we'll pause before we move on to another area because there will be possible multiple of you all would like to speak up. And we'll start with Alaska.
I'll start off for Alaska. This is Peter. Just want to remind the other Alaskans we'll be meeting at 1300 Alaska time today. Big theme will be prep for the prep for our refresher in May. And a report.
Nothing further from me, thanks.
Okay, let's move on to Eastern area.
Good afternoon, everybody. Matt Malesic. Just a couple updates. We're fairly busy. We had a pretty busy season in the southern tier. With that being said, we only have had one incident that went through a WFDS decision since last call. It went smooth. We actually had a decision support group that helped them through that. And feedback from that group was having previous WFDS trainings and WFDS trainings online really helped them get through that, as well as the decision support group. We're still working with some forests to get some updated spatial fire planning into the system, and that will be coming probably for the next round here soon. And then we're still planning on doing a training in the fall. Dates have been pretty soft at this point, but we'll have updated dates hopefully by next call, and we'll be able to share those. And I think Joe's the only other one on, unless he doesn't have anything. Thanks.
Okay, we'll move to Great Basin.
Hey, this is Dylan. I'll go ahead and jump in if nobody else will. Just a couple of things I'll put in the chat. We're doing our Nevada WFDS training on May 16th from 0900 to 1300, and there'll be a meeting registration link. Like I said, I'll put in the chat, and anybody's free to participate that'd like to. The only other update, I'm also part of Great Basin Strategic Fire Planning Committee, and we're working a memo that we hope to get released through the coordinating group out through the geographic area to just identify WFDS support, primarily FBAN, LTAN, SOPL, WFDS author type support, both in preparation for decision support team, regional decision support team, but also just to pool some limited resources for worst case planning needs as well. So that's the update I've got, unless there's any questions.
Idaho, mine's much shorter. Idaho has a WFDS AA refresher, Twin Falls District, May 3rd, 10 o'clock. I think I've already let Morgan know, but just FYI.
Okay, we will move on to Northern and Southern California.
For California, this is Kevin and North Ops. We are planning a region-wide button pusher type WFDS refresher for May 21st, as I mentioned in the chat. Dan Michael, who is on here, is kind of the organizer of the actual organizing the meeting from a teams and registration perspective, and there'll be a group of us working on the content. I believe we can probably toss that registration in the chat. And that's the only big news we have.
This is Dan. I tossed the outreach in the chat there, and while it's going to be sort of Forest Service centric because that's who Kevin and I work for, our partner agencies, especially around the state, are more than welcome. And if anybody from our partner agencies wants to help us put it on, they're more than welcome to hit me and Kevin up. But it'll be more of like a workshop format. We're not issuing refresher certificates for agency administrators. But the more people from different lines of work we get, it'll be better when we work through the exercises.
Okay, anyone else speaking up for NorCal or SoCal?
Hey, Morgan, this is Eamon Angber with Pacific West Region Park Service. We do have a region-wide WFDS refresher on April 26th. That's next Friday at 10:00. It's for MPS AAs, and I don't believe I've sent you that date. We just got that scheduled. Otherwise, low risk for large fires on MPS lands in the regions currently.
Can you either put that date in the chat or email it? Just look at it in writing, and between TJ, myself, and Rick, we'll get it added.
Yeah, added into the chat right now.
Thanks. Okay, moving on to Northern Rockies. This is Carly DeMars with the BLM. I don't have much other than we had our BLM spring fire meeting, and we talked a little bit about WFDS, but we're also working on planning a WFDS refresher for early June. So, and I'll get those dates once we have things settled in a report. Okay, we'll move on to the Northwest.
Hey, this is Ben for Forest Service in the Northwest. We're not planning any region-wide WFDS refreshers, but I think local units are doing some, and I know I sent you guys a date just a little bit ago for that, and I think others have been sending stuff in as they're made aware of them. And that's pretty much it, although I did have one question that I missed asking earlier. The ground evacuation time, version 2, that the RMA group's been working on, and we were just curious if that was going to make it into WFDS around the same time it shows up in the dashboard, which I think Rick said was going to be early May.
Yep, that's the plan.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jonah, could you take that one?
Yep, for sure. Yep, we'll be bringing that in.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, Rocky Mountain.
Hi, this is Amy. I'll jump in and cover both Forest Service and BLM. We have a few of this refreshers still yet to take place on local units, but dates have been sent in for that. We are getting together in May to start preparation for standing up our WFDS decision support group, which will occur in June. We don't have a need for that currently, but we'll see what the rest of the spring brings. Fuels conditions are really varying across the region at this time. Some areas are still dry, some are either starting to green up or are still under snow up in the higher elevations, but we're still getting some IA, and we are gearing up for prescribed fire season. End of report.
Okay, Southwest.
Good afternoon, everybody. Richie Sinkovitz, Southwest Region for the Forest Service. Very little fire activity in the Southwest right now. We have gone into PL2. We haven't had, I haven't seen any decisions being published for the Forest Service recently. Had a pretty good snow pack this winter. It's slow to come off. We're getting a delayed start to the Southwest fire season. We have been meeting as a decision support committee, getting together an analyst contact list. As we get closer to PL3, we'll probably send out a decision support center interest form for folks over the next month if they're interested in helping support fires as we get into the Southwest fire season. Most of our agency administrator and WFDS refreshers are in the past now, as folks have been onboarded, and we're kind of getting into the regular start of the Southwest fire season, even though this year it's being delayed. And yeah, that's end of report from Southwest Forest Service.
Good afternoon. This is Valdez with BIA Southwest. Fairly quiet on our end. I think the only bigger task that I'm working on is we got some new line officers and some change in FMOs. So it's just going back in to validate that they're all set up on their WFDS accounts and kind of helping troubleshoot some of the questions that they may be having. But other than that, that's pretty much BIA side.
Okay, lastly, Southern area.
Hey, Morgan, Dave Quisenberry with the Forest Service. Nothing really to share with the group. We're calming down in terms of fire activity. Thanks to everybody who supported us during the spring. I did have one question about since we're accessing WFDS with the PIV cards now, will users' roles time out after lack of use, or is it just, will you always be able to log in if your PIV card is good?
Okay, good question. So for the users that are accessing it with one of the pre-approved federal agency emails, so that is the Forest Service, the BLM, the BIA, the Park Service, and the Fish, those 5 agencies, your accounts or your profiles will still become disabled through lack of use after 330 days. However, those specific users, that subset that I just said that have who's the email they actually have in the system, if it's their federal email, they can auto re-enable their account and get back in. So let me just caveat that, like, it wouldn't work if, say, you're a Forest Service user, but you're using your WFDS account with your personal Gmail account. That won't work. We won't be able to do the auto re-enable but you also wouldn't have been using your PIV card with your private Gmail account, because the system is only allowing the auto re-enable if your email in the system is one of those 5 federal agency emails that ends in their domain. For all of the other users who are using a FireNet email, or aren't a federal user, their accounts would disable after 330 days of no use, and then it reverts to how we used to manage before we did the PIV card. A GAE will need to reassign the user's roles for them to get back in. So for the vast majority of the federal users, even though their account will disable, they can do the auto re-enable, and the non-feds and those feds that are choosing to use email addresses other than their agency's one, they will have to work with the GA editor if their account becomes disabled to get their role back.
Copy. Thank you. So the auto re-enable, that'll just be like prompts.
Yeah, you go to the screen and it says your account's disabled, and you click a rate. I don't have it. I don't have a count set where I could show you right now, but you click the radio button for your account and you click re-enable, and it will return your account to the roles you had prior to being disabled. So if you were an author before, you return to an author. If you were fire behavior before, you return to fire behavior. Whereas if you're not one of those federal users, your account's disabled, it'll take the GAE to say, okay, this person needs to be author, or this person should be fire behavior, or whatever role they want to assign that person.
Understood. Thank you. That's all I had.
The one nuance with that is that is only true if your account is disabled because you didn't log in for a long time. However, Dave, if you say manually disabled an account, either somebody had retired or was not going to be a WFDS user, or had some bad behavior that you did not want them to have a WFDS account, they will not be able to auto re-enable.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I mean, it would be rare here, but let's just say we had a bad actor and we disabled their account manually, or you did. They don't get the auto re-enable feature. Like, it's not a loophole for them to get back in. If your account is manually disabled, you're done.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any go backs for the areas? All right, we will continue to send out monthly emails for May and June, and we'll have our next quarterly call July 18th at 1300 using the same Teams line. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you.